What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. It's time to release my top 25 running back rankings. Now, these are my rankings as of August 2nd, and a lot of things are going to change in camp and preseason, so be sure to check out our most up-to-date rankings and projections at our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. But I'm going to walk through my rankings as of right now. And as always, if you enjoy our content, then be sure to leave a like on the video. It shows that you guys approve of what we're doing here. All right, let's start things off with the stat of the day. Today's stat: there were 3 wide receivers that played on at least 96% of their team's offensive snaps. Name 2 of them. So you need to get 2 of these guys correct. Okay, let's take a look at my rankings, and we're going to start things off at 1 with Alvin Kamara. And I want to note before we even start anything, this is half point. So in half point PPR leagues, it's a good mixture of everything. At 1, Alvin Kamara. And Kamara has turned in back-to-back top 4 running back finishes with an unbelievable 31 touchdowns in his first 2 seasons. And the crazy part is he's done this on less than 320 total carries. Like, he still hasn't been over 900 rushing yards. Kamara could finish as the running back 1 even if he has less than 200 carries, and there is not a single running back that you can say that about. He's got easily the most secure touchdown floor of any back in football, and he's great because he's game script proof. You know, if they score a bunch of touchdowns and they're up in the game, well, it's pretty likely that he scored at least 1, probably 2 touchdowns in that game. And if they fall down, then he's going to have another one of his 10 reception games. He's not going to produce like he did in those first 4 games without Mark Ingram last season. Sean Payton's come out and said that he doesn't want to use him like that for an entire season. They just had to last year. They want to keep his workload exactly the same, which is still perfect for a top overall pick because of how safe that he is. Plus, he actually got unlucky last season in yards per carry. So that should go up this season. Very safe with the touchdowns, very safe with the receptions. That's why I have him at number 1. At 2 is Christian McCaffrey, and he has 187 receptions over his first 2 seasons with 107 last year. He also showed that he can produce touchdowns. He had 13 total touchdowns last season. The one thing I want to point out is that his touchdowns are far less secure than Kamara, and that's the only reason I have him behind him. He had the 13 touchdowns, that's great, but 12 of them came in weeks 7 through 13, which means he had 1 total touchdown in weeks 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 14, 15, and 16 last season. I'm not saying he can't post more consistent numbers, but I trust the touchdown production of Kamara a little bit more. That being said, you know, the dude's going to have 80 plus receptions. He's going to be involved in every aspect of the offense. So even if he finishes closer to 10 touchdowns, it's going to come with, 80, 90, 100 receptions. So he's going to pay off his top 5 ADP. At 3, we have Saquon Barkley, and Barkley is just an absolute freak. He's got that 96th percentile bench press, 97th percentile burst score, 99th percentile height adjusted speed score, 99th percentile spark X score. He's also one of the best receiving backs in the league, and he can take it to the house on any given play to make up for poor fantasy performances the rest of the game. That's why I had him ranked 4th overall last season, even though we received an extreme amount of hate for giving a rookie that high of a ranking. He ran for over 1,300 yards and 15 total touchdowns, averaging 5 yards per carry and having 91 receptions. This season, there are 2 big concerns. The first is the yards per carry is very likely to regress. He had 16 carries for 641 yards on runs that went 20 or more yards. That's one of his strengths, but it's not something you can expect moving forward. The second is his offense. This is going to be one of the worst offenses in the league, and it's very difficult for a running back to pay off top overall value, which is where he's going right now, when the offense around him is so bad. Last season, they had a league average offense, so I don't want to hear the excuse, oh, he's done it before. No, last year they were league average. This year, they'll be very below average. There's only one player that defenses need to stop, and it's Barkley. That's it. The quarterback situation is so bad that teams do not need to respect the pass at all. I'm okay drafting Barkley, but not 1st overall, and that's where he's going, which means I won't be having any of them. At 4, got David Johnson, and I've talked ad nauseum about why I think David Johnson is a great pick this season. The short version is that he showed us his ceiling in 2016 with over 2,000 yards and 20 touchdowns. Then he showed us his floor last season as the running back 9, despite the worst offensive situation you could imagine. I don't expect another 2,000-yard, 20-touchdown season, but I do expect him to return to his 80 reception games and be a major part of their game plan in all areas of the field. If last year had never happened, then he would be going first overall in every single league. Running back 5, we have James Conner. And James Conner starts off this second tier of running back, and this might surprise some people. I'm just of the belief that the Steelers will do what they've always done and just use one main running back. There's been nothing out of camp to suggest that his workload will be scaled back. There have been random reports that are like, hey, they might use 2 backs. But there's nothing behind these reports. So until we see definitive news, yes, his workload will be scaled back. They will be using multiple running backs. We have to work under the assumption that they're going to do the same thing that they have always done. The Steelers have a top 5 offensive line, and their offense has always produced elite numbers for running backs. It hasn't mattered who's back there. D'Angelo Williams, Bell, Conner, even Jalen Samuels was productive when Conner got hurt last season. Let's not forget that James Conner was the running back 3 through week 10 before missing a good chunk of time due to the ankle sprain and concussion. So I'm fully on team James Conner, and his ADP is awesome where it is right now. At 6, we have Dalvin Cook, and the only concern with Dalvin Cook is his durability. He's suffered a shoulder tear, ankle sprain, another shoulder tear, torn ACL, and pulled hamstrings. When he's been on the field, the dude's been electric. He's got 4.7 yards per carry in his career, including 3 yards per carry after contact last season. He showed great receiving upside with 3 or more receptions in 73% of his games, and the Vikings improved their offensive line, drafting Garrett Bradbury in the first round. Last season, Cook had 40 receptions, even though he was only able to play 30 snaps or more in 9 of his games. They also brought in Gary Kubiak as their offensive coordinator. In the 22 seasons where he's been either the offensive coordinator or the head coach, his lead back has averaged a little over 1,100 yards, a little over 30 receptions, and 10.5 touchdowns. That's going to give you a running back 3 to a running back 6 finish. So if Cook can stay healthy, he's got absolutely no one pushing him for workload, and he's going to crush it. At 7, we have Joe Mixon, and Mixon enters his 3rd season as a pro at age 23. That's pretty young to enter in your 3rd season. Posted a 93rd percentile height-adjusted speed score, 77th percentile SparkX score. Mixon is an elite athlete, and the Bengals ran the 3rd fewest plays per game last season. Their offense should improve from just 23 points per game last year. That's the good. So all these things are good. He's a great athlete. He's a great running back. The team should be a little bit better. There are 2 negatives, though, with Mixon. One is the offensive line. They lost Jonah Williams and Clint Bowling. So now they basically have a bottom 5 offensive line in the league. The loss of Green as well for an unknown at this point amount of time hurts Mixon. At least while Green is out, the offense is going to score fewer points and be less efficient. Hopefully he can come back sooner rather than later. But if he misses a month into the season, it's going to hurt. With that being said, he's still awesome. He still has a ton of upside, and it's why I have him ranked 7th right now. Just know that there are reasons to be concerned, so you don't need to reach on Mixon, because honestly, his ADP is really nice at this point. At 8, I have Ezekiel Elliott, and I know some of you thought he was going to be much higher than 8. The only reason that I have him ranked this low right now is because as of recording this on Friday, August 2nd, he's still holding out. And the latest news that we have is that they're not close to a deal. As soon as he signs a new contract, he's moving up my rankings. But there still remains that risk that they can't agree on a contract before the season starts. And honestly, I'm surprised he's holding out. He still has 2 years left on the contract. So it's a different situation than Melvin Gordon, because he can just hold out halfway through the season and then get a new contract. But ultimately, we're just going to have to wait and see. But if you're in your draft and the contract has not been signed yet, then I don't know how you could feel good about drafting him. If they do sign it, though, he'll immediately move into my top 3. I don't know exactly where he's going to be in that top 3. He could be 1, 2, or 3. I don't know. But until we get that news, he needs to be ranked this low. He did show last season that he's capable of that passing game role. He actually got extremely unlucky with touchdowns, too. So if he plays for a full season, we should expect him to bounce back into double-digit touchdowns. It's just too risky. It's just too risky right now for me to take him in the first round. So just let other people take him. He's going 2nd overall. You can't take a guy 2nd overall until you know for sure that he's not holding out, because there are still awesome running backs available at that spot. At 9, Damian Williams. And remember what a Chiefs running back is capable of. Hunt finishes the running back 11 in half PPR scoring last season, playing just 11 games. Like, Hunt's a good running back. But the thing is, like, Williams is essentially a bigger, faster, more athletic version of Hunt. He showed that he's capable of producing in this offense as well. I mean, in the 5 starts he had last season, he averaged 114 yards and 2.2 touchdowns, which would have obviously finished as the running back 1 in fantasy. Those touchdown numbers are going to come down, but Andy Reid's produced a running back 1 for fantasy in 12 of his 20 seasons as a head coach. When you tell me you can get an Andy Reid running back at a discount, I'm all in. He did suffer a hamstring injury, which is something we need to monitor, because I always say, if a dude's starting the season with a hamstring injury, I'm not drafting him. So obviously watch that. Hopefully he comes back into this next week of training camp. If he does, I'm probably going to move him up a few spots in the rankings. I have him at 9 right now just because there is that unknown. At 10, LeVeon Bell, and he sat out the entire 2018 season, and then he changed teams, which obviously makes him much more risky than it has been in recent seasons. Not only did he spend a year away from football, but he leaves a top 5 offensive line to a team that ranked 23rd in points per game and 26th in plays per game. Now, I expect them to take a step forward, which means they'll probably increase their plays per game and points per game, but it's still a downgrade in situation for LeVeon. His second round ADP does come with massive upside, but there are a lot of unknowns. I do think Darnold's a good quarterback. They just have a really bad offensive line, and he's going to get fewer high expected fantasy point touches, and the touchdown ceiling is much lower than it has been in the past. So I think his ADP is fair. I've just typically been going elsewhere with my pick in that range. At 11, I have Nick Chubb, and people are honestly just overreacting to how much Kareem Hunt will impact Chubb's value. Over the first half of the season, you're very likely to have a top 7 running back in any format, and he's going to be the major reason why teams make the playoffs. When Hunt returns, Chubb's still going to be the lead back on a high-scoring offense. And he proved last season he's an elite running back. He was PFF's number 1 rated running back, 4th in yards per carry after contact per attempt, 4th most eluded tackles, and he converted 5 of his 7 carries inside the 5-yard line into touchdowns, which was one of the higher success rates in the league. He also finished 16th in fantasy points with over 1,000 total yards, despite not even starting until week 7. And that was with last season's offense. I mean, there were only 3 other running backs to face 8 or more defenders in the box at a higher percentage of their carries than Nick Chubb. He will not see that many stacked boxes with the addition of Odell. This is a kid that has legitimate 20 touchdown upside, so don't be overly concerned with Hunt's return in week 10, because you don't know what the league's going to look like in week 10. Rounding out the running back ones, we have Todd Gurley, and Gurley could absolutely have a great season, but he has much less upside than he has had in prior years. He has arthritis in his knee stemming back from his torn ACL, and the team has indicated that they plan on limiting his touches moving forward. They plan on using Henderson in that 3rd down role, while also using Henderson and Brown to ease some of Gurley's early down workload. The offense is good enough for Gurley to still produce on a limited workload, but I don't consider him in that first tier anymore. And I prefer drafting other players in the late first round, which is where he's been going in drafts. Someone in your league is going to reach and draft him either because they don't know about the knee injury or because they still think he has that same upside. But he's never going to see that volume again, so I just can't justify the risk. At 13, we have Kerryon Johnson, and I'm very happy that the Lions finally decided to move on from Theo Riddick. He's a good player. Like, I do think Theo's a good player. It's just for fantasy. Like, maybe I'm just being selfish, but he just tanks the value of all the other running backs on his team. Like I said in Friday's video, as a rookie, he was 2nd in yards per carry, 7th in yards per carry after contact, 2nd in yards per carry differential when you compare to his teammates, and 11th in yards after the catch per reception among running backs. With Theo gone, I have the dude projected for 64 receptions. I'm not concerned about CJ Anderson, though he might take some work on the ground. When you combine an improved offensive line with nearly all of the 3rd down passing work, I mean, man, Johnson just has so much upside this season. I will be targeting him in all drafts. At 14, I have Melvin Gordon. Melvin Gordon, we're going to sing the same song that we did with Ezekiel Elliott, the potential holdout. I think that Gordon does have a greater chance to hold out into the season, and I do think that he holds out halfway through the year and then returns. Ultimately, we just need to wait and see. And if I'm in a draft and Gordon does not have a new contract and I have heard nothing more than, hey, we're still not close, I'm not drafting him because someone else will, and it's just not worth losing a guy for half a year when you draft him in what? I mean, he's still going in the first round in a lot of leagues. Once he gets a new contract, if that happens before your draft, then I will move him to the very beginning of that second tier. So ahead of James Conner. I'll move him right to the second tier behind those top guys. But until that happens, he's staying right here. At 15, I have Marlon Mack, and the only bad thing I can say about Mack is his receiving upside is capped. He's on an elite offense, he has an elite offensive line, he is clearly the lead back and has a realistic path to 15 or more touchdowns this season. That's not something you can say about most running backs. That's not even something you could say most running backs have a path to. I really wish that he was used more in the receiving game, but unless Hines goes down, he's just not going to be. He's much more of a late second, early third round pick, which does still make him a good value because that's where he's going. But know that he's going to be a little bit more dependent on the Colts winning to produce in fantasy, which, I mean, isn't all that concerning, seeing how they are going to win a ton of games. But just know that there will be games where the Colts happen to fall behind, and he's just not a player that's going to produce when that happens. At 16, we've got Devonta Freeman, and I'm not 100% sure how to feel about Freeman this year. There's obvious risk drafting a player that's suffered as many injuries in recent years as Freeman. The thing is, if he could play all 16 games, then he's got top 5 upside. The Falcons did a lot to improve their offensive line this offseason, and he's by far the most talented running back on the Falcons roster. He has over 650 fewer carries than Le'Veon Bell, and Le'Veon Bell just sat out last season, and he's not that old. I think the public perception is that he's worn down, but I mean, he's got 1,000 career carries if you include the postseason. He's still just 27. The issue is that I don't know if he's an old 27 or what, but he's got the foot, the knee, the groin, the hip, the head. All of those are areas he's suffered injuries to in the last 2 seasons alone. But if he can find a way to stay healthy, then there's no one challenging him for touches, and we've already seen him finish as the top overall running back for fantasy. So it's not someone I'm going to reach on, but if I'm drafting that, because I've seen it in the mid, late third round, you really love your first 2 and you're like, hey, I love my first 2. I'm pretty sure I'm going to get someone in this early 4th round that I like as well. I'm cool with it. I'm honestly cool taking a shot at his upside. At 17, I have Derrick Henry, and he was PFF's 3rd rated running back last season, ranked 2nd in yards per carry after contact, 3rd in elusiveness rating, and 3rd in percent of carries that gain positive yards. He is a great running back, and it's honestly shocking that he's never been given the opportunity to be the bell cow. He's had more than 19 carries in 6% of his career regular season games. People like to use the argument that he hasn't lived up to the hype, but they're wrong. I mean, he has when he's been given the chance to. He has 12 career games with 14 or more carries, and his average stat line in those games, 20 carries for 104 yards and a touchdown. Over a full season, that's 317 carries for nearly 1,700 yards and 16 touchdowns. Would have finished the running back 5 last season between Kamara and Zeke. He has absolutely produced when he's been given the opportunity to. They just haven't given him the chance. Since 1991, there have been just 4 running backs with at least 2,290 rushing yards on fewer than 525 carries before their age 25 season, and he has the most touchdowns on that list by a mile. This dude's an absolute beast at 6'3", 250 with a 97th percentile height adjusted speed score. And if you want to use the they're a bad team, can't draft their running back on a bad team thing, well, they're getting better this year. They brought in Adam Humphries, they drafted A.J. Brown, they get Delaney Walker back from injury, and now Mariota's finally healthy. They also have an above average offensive line. So the only concern I have with Derrick Henry is the calf strain, but it looks like it's going to be fine. It looks like he's going to recover from that. They're just not going to give him that much work in camp, and they're obviously just going to hold him out for most of the preseason, if not all of the preseason. So it's very likely that this has no impact on him week 1. The only thing it's going to do is drive down his ADP, which makes him an even better draft pick. At 18, we have Josh Jacobs, and his ADP is very likely to change in a direction. I don't know which direction it's going to be when Hard Knocks comes out, because everyone's going to watch that, because we all want to see Antonio Brown do whatever he does in Hard Knocks, but I cannot predict what his ADP is going to be. Maybe it stays the same, because it doesn't actually have that much room to increase, but in my view, there's a pretty high chance that he's going to be their 3-down back, and if that becomes evident during Hard Knocks, then man, there's a chance he becomes an early third round pick, which is getting a little bit high for a running back that I don't think is elite by any stretch of the imagination, on an offense that I don't think's all that good, with an offensive line that's also not that good. But we're just going to have to wait and see. Right now, at that late third round, early fourth round ADP, I like that. I mean, I think that's a good value if you don't like anyone else in that range. But if he starts creeping up higher because of Hard Knocks into that early third, late second, it's going to have to be a pass for me. At 19, we've got Aaron Jones. And if you guaranteed me that Aaron Jones would stay healthy for every single game, I'd easily rank him in the top 10. That's how good he is, and that's how much upside he has. He was the full-time starter last season from weeks 8 through 14, and in that time frame, he was running back 5. While he's not known as a receiving back, he had a higher yards per reception than Cook, Zeke, Lindsey, Mixon, Dion Lewis, Kerryon Johnson, Chris Thompson, Theo Riddick, and he had a 90th percentile college target share. Last season, he led the league in yards per carry, was 6th in percent of carries to gain positive yards, was 1st in percent of carries to gain 5 or more yards, and 2nd in percent of carries that gained 10 or more yards. He was also league average in percent of carries that gained 20 or more yards, so we can expect him to maintain that high yards per carry average. In his 6 career games with more than 13 carries, he's never been under 72 rushing yards, averaging 20.6 PPR points per game. The only problem is he can't stay healthy. In his 2 seasons as a pro, he suffered 3 MCL sprains and a pulled hamstring, which forced him to miss 4 games in each season, and now he has another hamstring injury in camp. I think that he has the upside to keep him in that third round conversation, but the risk definitely keeps him out of the second round. At 20, I have Leonard Fournette, and I've never been a fan of drafting Fournette. I think that he's an extremely inefficient running back, and one day the Jaguars are probably going to realize that they're better off using him less. I mean, he's averaged 3.7 yards per carry over his career. He was 49th in breakaway percentage, 49th in elusiveness rating, 53rd in yards per carry after contact, recorded just 9 carries greater than 10 yards, and gained fewer than 3 yards on more than half of his carries. The Jaguars are better when they use him less. The issue is they won't. Despite not being all that good, they're going to give him the football, and for that reason, he's going to put up fantasy points. He has struggled to stay on the field, missing 34% of his career games due to injury or suspension, suffering a knee bruise, multiple ankle sprains, a quad bruise, and 2 pulled hamstrings. So he's very inefficient, he's very injury prone, but the thing is, you could draft him if he falls in drafts because they have absolutely no talent behind him. So they're going to need to give him the ball by default. Not someone I'm reaching on, not someone I'm pumped to get, but someone who could, while he's healthy, produce for you. At 21, David Montgomery, and the Bears are going to scale back Cohen's carries, which is obviously good news for David Montgomery owners, given how many touches they already gave Howard. We don't know a whole lot about the split between Montgomery and Mike Davis, but Mike Davis isn't all that great. So I don't think that it'll be long before Montgomery just takes over as the clear top option. So we can really view him as a Jordan Howard who can also catch. So getting him at his current ADP, very nice value. 22, Darryl Henderson. And the Rams have said that they plan on using Henderson like Chris Thompson. That's obviously great news for Henderson, and any running back would put up great numbers in this offense, so he doesn't need massive volume to pay off. I mean, remember, Alvin Kamara finishes running back 3 and 4 on 12.5 and 18.3 touches per game. So even if Henderson's only getting 10 to 12 touches a game, that's still massive upside. Remember, Henderson posted nearly 9 yards per carry in back-to-back seasons in college and is regarded as one of the most efficient college running backs ever. He has standalone value as a flex option as the worst-case scenario in week 1, yet league-winning upside if Gurley's knees get worse. At 23, we have Sony Michel. I have my concerns with Michel this season. He's a good running back, and the Patriots have a very good offensive line. But his problems are twofold. One's his health. He suffered multiple ankle injuries, a forearm fracture, a broken shoulder blade, 3 knee strains, and a torn ACL. The Patriots are doing everything they can to limit his work over the offseason, and they're likely to keep him out of preseason games. To me, this signals that they're not ever planning on giving him a full workload, especially after drafting Damian Harris, who's a really good running back. The second part is kind of what I just mentioned. For a number of reasons, he just doesn't have the same sort of volume upside that other people think that he does. His reception projection is around 10, which is not good, and they want to limit his carries to keep him healthy. The only way that he pays off at his ADP is if he gets very lucky in the touchdown department, which could happen, but I'd rather just draft Damian Harris at the end of drafts. 24, running back 24, we have Shai Penny, and I talk a lot about how much I like Penny on this channel, and in Thursday's video, I went more in depth on him, but in short, he's just as good, if not better, than Chris Carson, and the offense will run the ball to make both of them viable options, even while both of them are healthy. If Carson were to go down, though, like something he's done in every single season since a junior in high school, Penny would likely be a low-end running back 1 or a high-end running back 2. Penny had a higher yards per carry, a higher yards per carry after contact, had 10-plus rushing yards on a greater percentage of his carries, and he had a much higher breakaway percentage. Penny was also much more dominant in college and posted a higher target share while having a 93rd percentile height-adjusted speed score. Chris Carson's a good NFL running back, but so is Penny, and there's enough volume for both of them to produce. At 25, I have Chris Carson, so they're right next to each other in my rankings, and this is right where he's going in drafts, so it's not that I'm off of drafting Chris Carson. This is exactly where his ADP is. The kid had 247 carries last season through only 14 weeks. And there's opportunity now available with Mike Davis gone. So like I said, there are concerns over his health, and I would rather draft Penny, but that doesn't mean you can't draft Carson because there's opportunity to go around in this offense. So those are my top 25 running backs this season. Remember, you can see the full list along with updates as they change at our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. But that's the end of this video. I hope you all did enjoy. If you did, how about hitting the like button? If you're new here, how about subscribing to the channel? But thanks for watching.